How are workshops? Is everyone feeling pretty hyped up? Yeah, like the thumbs up if you're really doing previous workshops. Nice. Oh, good. Amazing. Very, very cool. And we get to try out another workshop this afternoon. So some of the awesome things you maybe didn't get a chance to try this afternoon. So now we're getting on to our exciting panel. So the panel focus is the environment in your career. And what I've kind of been hearing from chatting with some of you is a lot of people here are thinking about how do you take that step into environmentalism, environmental activism, climate activism, whatever it is when you're looking at a job. Is it something you're going to do as a full-time career? Is it something that you're going to do as a volunteer thing on the side of what you do? How are you going to make that work with your life? And a big question, and it's a question I'm still figuring out how to fit environmental activism fully into my life and paid work, and something we've all had a big journey on, I believe. So we've got a panel here today of a whole range of people who have had very different journeys into environmentalism. Some of them work full-time in environmental type roles, some of them don't, but have side-by-side passion to these ways of making it work. And yeah, basically, I'm going to ask a couple of questions to kick us off. And then it's over to you guys. So it's really good chance to interrogate these lovely people on everything you would want to know about their jobs in environmentalism and how they got there. But the first question is very simply, introduce yourself, guys. Who are you? What are your pronouns? What is your name? What is your role or job? What are you kind of currently doing? Yeah, maybe a little bit about how you got to where you are today. I realize that's quite a big ask in one question. But over to you, Mike. You've got the mic.
Mike's got the mic, so I'll start. I'm Mike Joy, and I guess I'm an activist now. I'm a scientist. I'm a freshwater ecologist who's kind of got into more and more into climate and other issues. But I didn't even go to university till I was 33, and I was definitely not an activist. I got thrown out of school in the sixth form. I don't even know if you know what that means anymore, but year 12. And then had a whole life of just being selfish, and I did things like building houses and drive trucks and buses and sailed the ocean and help and build an old boat and did all sorts of things like that. And then started to become aware of the issues. Went to university, did an undergrad degree, a master's, and then a PhD, and then started lecturing at Massey University. And the more and more I learned, well, I do need to say that the more degrees that I got, the more I realized I didn't know anything. I think I thought I knew stuff before I went in there, but one of the greatest learnings that I think that you get is you realize just how much you don't know. And that's really important. But I just became more and more aware of the problems that were facing the planet. And so I became more and more active. Ended up in a big fight with our Prime Minister that went on international TV that kind of made a lot more people aware of what I was doing. And so yeah, I've just, I now work here at Victoria University, have for the last 4 years, just a couple of floors up from here. And I pretty much get involved in all kinds of things, still related to freshwater, but also to climate change and the multiple crises that go with climate change. And that's pretty much what I do now. Okay.
Amazing. Kia ora, thank you, Mike.
Kia ora koutou. I am just realizing I sat in the horrible wrong spot because I think sitting after Mike Joy was always going to be a bit tough. Kia ora koutou. Ko Lauren Pukawenua. My name is Lauren Craig. I use she, they pronouns, and I am is trying to figure out a way to condense this, like an environmental legal activist. I finally finished studying a degree in law, international relations, and public policy, which means I had a lot of classes literally right here in this room. So it was really weird being back. And I think for me, like some of the big stuff and the reason I was asked here is that we've done some really cool through uni, I got involved in the Vic Uni Climate Clinic, which is kind of always been set up as a way to let you use your degree to make meaningful action against climate change. So the big thing we did was that a year and a half ago now, still going on. We took a judicial review, a legal case essentially against the government for continuing to allow onshore oil exploration in New Zealand, because we thought it was kind of ridiculous that in today's day and age, you could still be drilling for more oil or even looking for spots to drill more oil. Yeah, I thought we were a little bit past that, but apparently not. And that's still going on, and that's pretty cool. Not a lot of people in their early 20s get to file like their own legal case sort of thing like that. And that's been awesome to work on with my team. And then our other big case was last year, we went overseas to The Hague in the Netherlands, which is where the International Criminal Court is. And when there, we delivered a case to the ICC, which essentially stated that the senior executives of BP are guilty against crimes against humanity for their knowing cover-up of climate change. So that was also cool, and also like kind of terrifying to fly around the world and like meet all the fancy international lawyers and be like, yeah, just like trying to sue like one of the biggest companies in the world. Especially because I honestly still feel like a child that has no idea what she's doing. And yeah, in terms of work stuff, the other thing I've done that I'm pretty proud of is that I've done a lot of political work. Last year, I was a campaign staffer on Tory Whānau's campaign for Wellington Mayor, which was really cool. Watching her go from she'd been my mentor previously, and she was just like this cool person I knew that had done cool things, to mayor, which was wild and so much fun. And just a really cool, different way to try and make change. The other last thing I'll note, right, is that I'm a transgender woman, which I think plays a pretty big part in my kaupapa, in my activism, in my purpose, and why I'm here. And I think it has a pretty strong intersection between that searching for justice, whether that be in my own life for all trans people, or for literally not having us all die from climate change, is a pretty big one too. Yeah, I think that's me. I can't think of anything else.
Sure, thank you, Lauren. So already meant to complete that as in the climate change space, as you can probably tell. Obviously, you might get in trouble in the media from time to time, and Lauren is actually taking on BP at The Hague. Not taller than it, kind of up here. And Benji is equally as this. Tell us about Benji.
Kia ora. Yeah, thank you, Lauren and Mike, to follow both of you, even more stressful as it goes down the line. But a bit about me. So I grew up across the Manawatu region, moving around quite a bit with my family there. And then following that, moved to Wellington. But about 8 years ago, I got the opportunity to do a bit of work up in the Refugee Resettlement Centre here in New Zealand. And while I was there, I sort of got buddied up with this 14-year-old boy at the time, and we were doing just kicking around a football and stuff, and saw him light up. But at the time, he could only speak 5 English words, and sort of saw the challenges that he'd faced coming into New Zealand. And then at the same time, the NZ Child Poverty Monitors research released that 290,000 Kiwi kids are in income poverty. And sort of looking at these two things together really built this passion and drive for me behind kind of social impact. And at the time, I founded this charitable trust called Education is a Right, Not a Privilege. And what this charity does is it focuses around looking at challenges and barriers that kids face in their education. Particularly, we took an area that we saw as kind of not focused on when everything's focused around, let's say, uniforms and stuff in the media. We saw stationery as another big cost. And having just finished high school at the time, I saw that, I had this graphics calculator, these books, pens, pencils just lying around, and the opportunity to be able to redistribute those to different kids throughout our country. So we started this idea that was kind of like a food bank, but for stationery, and that's grown into desks, chairs, school bags, drink bottles, lunch boxes, through to pens and pencils and everything that we've been able to redistribute. And then I also, under another hat, work for an awesome organisation called Creative HQ. And at Creative HQ, I get to work with a range of different, particularly startups and businesses, but particularly passionate in the environment space. And facing different challenges and looking at different kind of problems that they tackle in that space. And that's included getting to work alongside companies such as Beca around decarbonisation trajectory, and then getting to work with organisations such as World Vision to look at their child sponsorship model and how can they create something around climate change and how they're going to tackle that, with that being something that could literally undo all their work that they've done as a charity, and look at how can they create something of the same impact and what that's going to look like. And yeah, so sort of as I've gotten more and more into kind of the social impact, I've realized that, you know, the social impact and the environmental impact go hand in hand, and that passion's kind of grown from there. And my preferred pronouns are he and him.
Got it. Thank you, Benji. Yeah, Benji is the perfect example of how you can kind of start out anywhere and you still end up taking environmental activism because you can't separate. If you care about things that matter, if you care about people, if you care about animals, if you care about nature, it all kind of ends up intermingled somehow. And it's just awesome to see the work you've been doing. Francine, over to you.
Right. Okay. This is getting really difficult, but never mind. Okay. My name is. First of all, I must say I'm not used to doing that sort of thing. This is not my cup of tea at all. I don't go to court. I don't go to university to do talks. My name is Francine, and I'm pronounced she or her. Today, before I came, I thought I could have thinking, you know, what do I really want to say to those guys, you know? And I just felt like I just want to say to you, just what I've done really in my life, because I think I'm the type of person that you'll meet in the street or you'll meet anywhere in the world, not the person that you'll meet on TV, but the person that tried to do the best she can do, I think. Okay. So when I was your age, I remember I was quite wild, sort of a wild but nice person. Wild in the sense that whenever there was a strike, people thought, no, I was wild because I would go to any strike, you know, possible. And being French, you know, there are a lot of strikes in France, a lot of strikes. So I got a lot of choices. But one of the first strikes I went to was for the nuclear testing in the Pacific. And that was quite a really tough one to take on board because at the time, you know, we were very divided on the subject in France, and I lost friends because of that. But for me, it was so important, so I wouldn't let that go. And to this day, I still I still feel strong about it. So all I can say to you today is that when I was your age, I had no idea I wanted to do. Sustainability, I don't know what it meant really, but I was aware that we had to do things the right way. I was aware that my grandparents, you know, switch off, and they told us I had to switch off the lights. Food was scarce in our house. So if there was a piece of potato, we would keep the piece of potato in the fridge, and then we'll go in the soup the next day. So I was really aware that there was important things to, you know, to do. And it was going to be a hard road, but I had no idea what I wanted to do, but I wanted to be around people all the time. So I did also things. I studied a degree, not really needing it. I never used my degree really, but I think it was important to study because you do learn. Whatever you study, you do learn, and it gave me, you know, strength in what I wanted to do next time. And then I saw that thing on a piece of paper. I saw that I could become an exchange student in the United States. So when I was 16, I enrolled, but I didn't have the money to go there. So I found the money to actually go and spend 1 year in California. So when you're 16, in the 70s, going to California was a wild thing to do. But it gave me, you know, I spent a whole year with a Korean family, and I learned about the United States, but I learned about Asia as well. And I think that was the start of my journey of, yeah, we're all so different here, but we're all here together. And we have to care for this planet, that's for sure. There's no doubt about it. So my life from then has always been about doing the right thing. So for example, in my everyday life, you know, I never owned a car in my life, never planning on doing so. I will share a car, but I'm not planning on owning a car. I've cycled all my life, I've walked. I've been lucky to live in cities with a good public transport, very good public transport. So whatever I do, it's now, as I feel it comes naturally. I never buy a plastic, you know, bottles. And simply because that comes from my grandma. My grandma once, you know, took us to a picnic. And in these days, when the 80s, you know, we thought it was a nice idea to bring some plastic cups just to save the dishes. We thought it was the right thing to do in the 80s. No, convenience, it was called. And my grandma sent us back and said, I'm not going to drink in a plastic glass. Never. She would never touch plastic. And it did stuck, in me. So I think my journey is all about different bits and pieces. And now I live sustainably in my own way. I do what I can. And I work for a place I work for a Hopper shop, Hopper Home. I don't know if you guys know about it, but it's a place where you get a refillery, where we're trying to encourage people to shop without packaging at all. We've got a Kai Cycle is next to us. Kai Bosch, sorry, is next to us. We've got a wood workshop, and we're trying to develop the building. Again, we're not putting a name, but we're trying to make it a sustainable building. And we welcome young people like you. And I talk to a lot of people that sort of, come to me and say, what do you think of this? Or in your shop, would you buy, would you sell that product? And I love doing that. And when someone comes to me and say, would you sell that product? I always say to them, do we need that product? Do we need to have another product? And it's very important to realize that now we're coming to a point, I think, to me, that we don't need to keep on inventing things all the time. We have to stop. We have to stop creating, new needs. So I really enjoyed that conversation. Sorry, I'm talking too much already. What I was going to say is before I came to Hopper, I was in a very traditional, I had to work, and I was in retail for many years. And all I heard while I was working in retail is, okay, Francine, you had a great year. Can you do more next year? Can you make more money next year? And it came to a point that I sort of knew it just wasn't right. Making more money is not the right path. We just can't keep on producing. We just can't do it. So I just resigned. And I just ended up, going to Hopper. And when I was working, and just one last thing I say, but when I was working in those big companies, I really try hard to influence the companies in terms of packaging. And sometimes you just realize that the conversation wasn't there. But if you felt strong about it, you can actually bring a conversation and things can change. And things did evolve in some cases. So one last thing I say, and I'll stop, sorry guys. So if you start, you're all young and you're going to go for jobs. So I would really like you to sort of think, when you go to the next company or you find an employer, ask them what they're doing in terms of sustainability. Ask them the question at the interview. What do you do? Because it's very important that you don't ask that question. Choose the people you're going to be working for. And I've been very lucky in my life to actually work for companies that maybe I wouldn't work with anymore, but I've been able to change things. And, it came from a time where women didn't have the same pay. When I started, I was doing the same job as a man, but in my company, I was paying less, but I was part of a committee and I fought for that. And we won at the end. The company was able to actually readjust that. And that's in the 80s. So we're a bit behind here in some of the companies we've got around the country. But anyway, we'll talk more about those things maybe later on.
Nice. Kia ora, Francine. It's great you actually kind of answered the second question as well at the same time. So you're leading us on really nicely. But no, it's perfect kind of getting into the advice. And if you guys haven't met Francine before, get down to Hopper Home. It's this incredible refillery space on Hopper Street. So it's easy to remember. A great place to go and get all of the things not in packaging. So just before we move on really quickly, just to let you know a bit more about me as well. My pronouns are she, her. I went to uni to theatre and I was determined I was going to be a West End musical actress. And what I learned most from university was that really was not the right career pathway for me. But I discovered politics along the way and decided that making a whole lot of drama, the streets, protesting, getting involved in all kinds of drama and inside in business settings, stirring things up was something I actually got a lot of joy out of. So I actually went off to, after uni, got involved in a charity called Initiatives of Change. It was a youth peace and conflict resolution charity. What they did was help young people who had been involved in complex situations kind of get back into being engaged in society again and feeling like they can impact change. But what I learned through that Living with Adventures journey was I went down a social pathway, but realised that so many people back home in New Zealand I knew couldn't impact change on the things that they cared about, or at least they felt that they could. The reality is you actually really can, and I've seen that time and time again through my career. But that led me down a pathway of founding an app called Collaborate. We took the code from Tinder with 4 friends from uni and we used it to connect young people to issues that they cared about that they can take action on with their skills. And through doing that and kind of creating a social movement, we got people involved in the co-design because we had no idea what we're doing. We'd never built an app before. So we just involved like 400 people in doing it and it built this whole movement. And then somebody said, hey, can you do that with businesses and sustainability? So that's how I'm here today. I go and do that with businesses. I get more involved in workshops and thinking creatively about how we can affect systems change. And that kind of leads in, I guess, to the next bit, which is about the advice that you would give yourself. The question is initially something more about the advice that they would give you guys, but I think it's really hard to think about that because you guys are living in an entirely different time and context. You know, I'm 30 when I was 15 or 18. But what I can think back on is when if I was sitting in the audience now as like 18-year-old me, what would I have wanted to know? So I think my thing for me, to kick it off, is that I have learned that all of the things that I'm really bad at, I can only focus on doing. If I just focus on the strengths that I have and do the things that I love, you can create roles that create impact out of that. So I'm now something called regenerative designer, which basically means I'm really loud and I run a whole lot of workshops where I get people excited about thinking about things. And that was so much better for me than the jobs I did when I was like straight out of uni. And I said, you have writing papers, you have anything you asked me to do. But the last I realized about is these are the skills I've got and these are things I care about. The way that career pathways just opened up for me. But Benji, on the mic, what about you? What's the piece of advice?
Yeah, if I was to give my younger self a piece of advice, I guess there's often a lot of ideas around your age being quite a limitation to what you do. And I know that can be quite a barrier you face in terms of, especially if you're passionate and driven about making a change around something. I know we're seeing more and more in the media, young people standing up for what they believe in and everything, which is really cool to see. But just remember, you know, don't ever think, you know, I'm too young to do this or whatever and be challenged by that, because eventually you're going to get to a point in your life where you're going to say, I'm too old to do it now. So just do it now.
Yeah, nice.
I've been struggling with this one. I've just been thinking about it a bit because, I mean, especially if I was talking about like to my younger self, well, I definitely was not someone that succeeded in high school. That is for sure. Not the best time of my life. You know, it wasn't terrible, but like just pretty average. And I didn't really do anything that exciting, right? Got very average grades and eventually just good enough to get into uni. So it worked out. I mean, I was also pretty distracted by, I don't know, actively repressing the fact I was trans. So that was probably like my biggest hobby. Anyway, in terms of like actual like advice, right? I honestly think that for me, it really comes down to just go for it, which to me is like the reason I feel like I've been able to do cool things or things that I'm really proud of is because I just kind of went, oh, well, might as well, and did it. And that happens plenty of times where it doesn't work out, right? And I just like don't talk about those experiences. I just talk about the ones that were cool and worked. But for me, it was just like trying the things I wanted to do, not really letting, you know, or like trying to actively identify whatever barriers were there to stopping me and working against those, right? Like, I think it was just a bit of like, if you want to be the person that studies law and sues the government, do it. Like, apparently you just can. I'm still kind of surprised because I still don't really think I have any idea what I'm doing, but things kind of seem to keep working out and getting some really cool results. Like, I think you should just, if there's something you want to do and that thing is a good thing in the world, just chase it, just go for it. Like, literally anyone can do this stuff. We just need people doing it. God knows there is no shortage of things to do in the climate, in the environment, in the social space. There's always more work to be done. And just having someone willing to do those things, do anything, makes the biggest difference of all. And just to piggyback on what Benji said too, I think, you know, as much as it can be seen as to be a disadvantage to be young in this space, I honestly think it gives a lot of extra power. Something we've talked a lot about in our climate case has been that as the next generation, well, I guess I'm kind of the current generation now, geez. It's all about like, we're the most affected by climate change, right? You guys are more affected than me by climate change. You have more of it to live with and to deal with the worst consequences of it. There is a lot of value in having that voice from the next generation that I really think that is something that can easily be used to your advantage. Yeah.
So agree. I was having a chat to some people on the break about sort of why didn't they get a youth, like I'm 30, but like an even younger NC who's by before you. And they said, oh, you know, you have 10 years of doing stuff, you've got some things that you can share, maybe a bit more wisdom. And I laughed. And the reason for that is because, and I think Michael alluded to this too, I think the longer you play in this space, you realize that it's not like there's a whole bunch of people holding this information who know what they're doing and you've got to find a way to fit in with that. Most people don't fucking know what they're doing. They're just doing it and they just got more confident about being loud about it and getting angry about it or doing whatever it takes. And yeah, that's probably, you know, adults don't know what they're doing necessarily. So just start doing it and you probably have more impact than I think a lot of us out there trying it because we're something new and you see it in a different way. So yeah, Mike. Over to you.
I was just going to quickly say, I couldn't agree more with Holly. I have no idea what I'm doing at any point, but I honestly think like if you just act a bit confidently about it, things do tend to work out pretty well.
Yeah.
And yeah, there is absolutely no one holding the playbook. If we were just trying to do things the way people have always done them, the way people older than us did them, well, that's not really great when we're here for like talking about climate change, right? Like that didn't work. So we have to try something new. So
100%.
you guys have just as much a clue as any of us.
Yeah, I totally agree with what everyone's been saying. Some people call it imposter syndrome, but if you feel it now, don't worry. You know, I'm the oldest person in the room, I'm sure, and I still feel it. It's the reality. But if I look back at my life, I'm so kind of inspired by you guys because at your age, I couldn't give a shit about anything except me. It was all about me, and it was probably all about me until I was in my 30s. And then the awareness came as I studied. But the advice would be, you know, looking back to myself would be, I wasted so much time doing things that made money that I didn't really believe in. And then at some stage, I started doing everything only because it's what I believe in. And that's where any kind of sense of satisfaction comes from, is that, you know, be true to yourself and never compromise. It's just so crucial. Don't compromise because of pressure, whether it's peer pressure or, you know, boss pressure or whatever. If somebody's trying to make you go against what you know is right, then don't do it. And so you know, for me, it was just as I studied. I mean, I could reel off facts all day long about science. You know, so it's not that knowledge. That's not where the imposter syndrome comes from. It's about it's about how to make that change. And I don't believe in telling people how to live their lives, but I think it's so crucial that people understand. And so most of my work is actually, lots of it is legal now. It seems to be the only place where we win is in court. But it's just trying to get that awareness out, because we're up against such a powerful, well-funded machine that wants to tell people that everything's all good and just keep on buying more of our stuff and it'll be great and there's not a problem. And governments get so caught up with that because they want to be popular as well and get voted in. So it's that, you know, if you learn nothing else, it's about how to be critical and how to see through that spin that's being thrown. So I guess back to my advice to me would have been, forget the money, do what you believe in, and then that's the way to a real true well-being. Happiness is doing what you believe in.
100%, couldn't agree more. So we'll do a quick fire round now, before we move on to kind of questions from the audience. I'd be really curious to know, when you were the age of people in the audience, what job did you think you were going to have? So just kind of a one-word answer, quick fire round.
A policeman.
Nice.
Engineer.
Oh.
Probably a dentist.
I know exactly. I had no idea. Absolutely no idea. There's one thing I was interested in is dance, but I wasn't good enough. I realized very soon that I wasn't good enough. But I think between the age 20 and 30, you should know what you want to do. You should really just experiment. That's what I think.
Amazing. And I realized you sort of led to it in your previous question, Francine, but did you have anything else to add on of advice before we move on to audience questions?
But I think, I think I've been very lucky in my life that I've met good people, right people. So my advice is really stay wide open and just go towards people, go and meet them, ask questions, find out what he's doing, you know, because it's incredible. I mean, there's a variety of people there, and every day, you know, I'm in my 60s and I love being alive every day of my life because of the people. And because every day, and I'm lucky that I meet, you know, a lot of people through my work, but every day there's something that, you know, so just be open to where, and, you know, you might say, oh, today I'm doing that. But, you know, when I was doing my degree, you know, I had been told that, okay, I should be doing that, you know, and that. So I did my degree and I went to London for a year because I was going to become an English teacher in France. Went to London, worked for a year, and didn't come back after 3 years because I liked London so much, you know, and I stayed there. And then after 3 years, I should have come back and become a teacher. But then I went around the world and hitchhiked around the world. And then I found New Zealand on the way, and that wasn't planned at all. And then so I sort of went back to France and then said, oh, I'm going, so I came back to New Zealand, you know. So I think just, you know, each time in my life, I mean, you know, just be open and just do like everyone said, you know, I think you've got to sort of go with your guts, you know, if you believe in something, just go for it. And if you know, if every day you work hard for yourself, for the world, I mean, you're on the right track. Whatever you'll do, you know, you'll be fine. You'll be fine.
Yeah, perfect. I love that. Never stop loving. If you stop loving it, if it's not the right fit, if you're not vibing with the people, if you don't agree with it, you know, I changed. I took 3 months out. I just quit my job and said 3 months unemployed, figuring out what I want to do next because I wasn't having the right kind of impacts in my past. And I just found an awesome new job that can use all of my skills. Yeah, how about it? The New River project, if you guys know that, building riverbanks and stopbanks for climate change. I never thought it worked in infrastructure, but yeah, so never feel afraid to stop and figure out what's next. So we did have a question about the importance of taking climate action, but I think in the interest of time, I think you might all have a sense of climate action being important. And I can see you guys kind of starting to whisper. So I think there might be some kind of key questions out there in the audience. So I might hand over to you guys. We have some people with mics, amazing. So what we're going to do, yes, hands up. Feel free to keep putting your hands up because as soon as someone finishes the question, I'll bring the mic to the next person. I want to hear what you have to ask us. Yeah.
Kiara, nice to meet you guys. And I have a particular question for Dr. Mike Joy. I actually read about your things, and I'm a PhD student in WIC Exfel. Recently, we have like this budget issues going on with WIC, and I read about how all your like after you started working in science, you have been a strong advocate and always like going against the main current, trying to fight for climate change and stuff. But of course, with such strong opposition, that there would be some resistance towards your career and your path. So how do you constantly hold on to that? And how do you feel like when some of your work was dismissed or like even there's like some redundancy going on stuff, and I read about those. How do you persist through these tough times? Yeah, because it concerns your own survival and well-being as well. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, it's tough sometimes. I think people think that I'm thick-skinned, and I mean, you guys probably haven't heard about it, but when I got into trouble a few times, when I've spoken out, and I've received a couple of awards for this thing called being the critic and conscience of society, which is written into the Education Act for academics, are supposed to do that. Only universities become more and more corporate, and they're less and less supportive of people speaking up. But you know, for me, it went to the extent of people calling for me to be hung, shot, you know, public broadcasters even, you know, midnight attacks on email and social media and all that kind of thing. So it does turn really, really nasty. But for every attack, there would be at least 20 supportive people that contact me through emails or social media or whatever. So, and I figure you need a ratio of about 20 to 1 to fight it off. But no, in some ways it's hard, but And I have colleagues who go through this where they get attacked for standing up for what they believe in. And it's not good for your career. I've managed to hang on just by persisting in doing the science as well as the public role, so they really don't have a leg to stand on. And I was recently made redundant here. My job, I was given 3 months redundancy because the funding had run out. It got a whole lot of publicity. It was in the newspaper and on TV. And within a week, an organisation called the Morgan Foundation approached the university and said, can we please fund Mike's position? So I now have a role here for another 5 years through the funding of an outside corporation, a trust fund, to support the role. So, I mean, that's an example of, I guess there's support out there. You don't even know it's there, but at a crucial time, they'll come and save you. So, if anything I've learned is to, it can be really, really scary and horrible and isolating, but it doesn't last, and the support comes through, as long as you're sort of hold to your truth and you win out in the end, kind of thing. But definitely it can restrict your chances of getting promotion within the university. And I've got many colleagues who their progression has stalled because they speak up, but they still do it anyway. Yeah.
Inspiring, thank you. And probably a really good reflection on the theme, I guess, of the weekend on well-being. If you kind of go in, work in this space, Mike's right, it is hard. Laura and I had a bit of a laugh on the phone through prepping for this about how everyone's had a crying in the kitchen for a moment in activism. But the things you learn this weekend, the connections you make, the people who support you. This is a really good place to reflect on how you're going to set yourself up to really thrive when it gets tough, because sometimes it is. Who's next?
I had a question kind of for Francine, but just a general question. How do you reconcile the things that you enjoy, that bring you fulfillment, but are ultimately kind of meaningless, like the foods that you eat, or things like makeup and skincare and things that you enjoy that you don't really need, that probably cause more climate damage, than they're worth, but you do enjoy them? How do you reconcile and find a happy medium, or I don't know, happy minimal?
Yeah, go for it. The question is sort of about how do you deal with, I think, if I paraphrase, the environmental conscience side of you, where there's things you enjoy in life, and then we can't get environmentally perfect choices for everything we have. So how do you balance that? And I think we had a chat before about travel and things like that. Yeah.
Hitchhike, that's a good one. We're not trying to be perfect, but you can be great. I think for me the important is try to aim high. So, for example, if you like clothing, and I know when teenagers, like clothing usually, but now you've got a choice of going to secondhand shops, which I didn't have when I was of your age. So I think that's great. This is something that's coming along. But just the first question is just ask yourself, what do you really need? This is what I was thinking. What do you actually really need to be happy? If it's your clothes, well, you're going to find a way to find some clothes that's sustainable. Maybe don't buy the cheap clothes, but buy something that's made here in New Zealand. You might buy one thing a year and not 10 pieces, because this is where the issue is at the moment. We're buying too many clothes. Yeah, so I think it's just, ask yourself what is really important. For me, I've integrated in my life now, and maybe because it's been easy, and I do think it's easy. It was easier at my time than your time. Plastic, for example, there's plastic everywhere you go now. It's crazy. But when I was buying food at your age, there was hardly any plastic, so it was easy. But what I really recommend, because I work in retail, is please do boycott product. Boycott as much as you can. Look at the product. Look at what you're eating. Look at the ingredients. Most of what you've got on the shelves are no good for you in terms of health. So don't go for it. And go for simplicity. That's the easiest thing you can do for me in terms of sustainability. Don't buy the fancy sauce. Don't buy this. Just, it's something that's, that always puzzles me is garlic. Why do we have garlic in small packaging and small bottle? We don't need garlic, doesn't need to be stored. You don't need to buy that. So I think question everything you want. Like at the moment, I've got a big question on my phone is that I've got that e-bike, I was given an e-bike as a thank you gift for doing some work, I didn't get for it, pay for it, and I got an e-bike. And all I could think now is, okay, I've got this e-bike. It's great because I live in Brooklyn. I'm so happy to go up the hill so quickly. What am I going to do with that battery when it's off? So whatever you do, whatever you buy, whatever you do, ask yourself at the start, how was it made? Where it's going to end up? And if you haven't got the right answer that satisfies you, just don't buy it. Things will get better. I'm very hopeful that we're going to have good technology now, and we're going to improve maybe packaging in the future. No plastic. I'm completely anti-plastic. We're talking about recycling. I'm sorry, we passed the recycling phase. It's reusing now for me. We've got to reuse things. We've got enough clothes to last. I was reading a while ago, enough clothes to last the next 70 years worldwide. So really, we should just stop all the factories and stop manufacturing. If we really were honest with what we're saying and thinking, that's what should happen. If I was campaigning now, and I put that on my newsletter the other day, those $2 shop? Ban. No, don't let anything come in New Zealand. $2 shop. No, it's great. Sometimes you go to party, you get anything, but it's all bullshit. It's just plastic. It's been made by God knows who, how, and you're going to throw it away because you're not going to be able to recycle it. So, yeah, you can do this. There are possibilities. If you don't have much money to eat boiled potatoes every day, and that's all. There's nothing wrong with boiled potatoes. Why do you have to have that fancy sauce in it? Yesterday, someone called barbecue sauce. Came to the shop and wanted a barbecue sauce, and I laughed and said, do we need barbecue sauce in our life? And I can't say that, my customer. Sometimes I do say that. But yeah, I think there's actually, the world there's incredible resources, but choose and question everything you do. And then once you start questioning, then it becomes a habit, and then it becomes natural, and then it's easy. You're going to buy that one items. You're not going to buy that plastic bottle. You're going to eat all your potatoes. If that's all you can eat. Doesn't matter. You won't die if you eat only potatoes with no barbecue sauce.
Thank you, Francie. So I think in a summary there as well, great place to go to find some products that aren't packaging. And also, yeah, and one thing I said earlier, and I like to really feedback into that as well, was you said about asking for a job, asking about a business's values. But if you're buying something that you love, but it doesn't currently come in a sustainable way, the more you ask for that change, the more they see that change being demanded. And it really makes a difference. I work with big companies at the big end of town, and what their consumers are asking for drives them so much in their decisions about what to invest in, what to change. You'd be so surprised the impact of, I do it now all the time. Anything I ask for in a shop, I ask, can I get this out of packaging? Please stand with me.
I just say one of the things, in the supermarket, if there's a product that's not sold, you can bet that within a month it'll be removed from the shelf, because big companies want to make money. So if they don't make money with that product, they'll remove it. No. So keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. You've got really power as a consumer. You've got the power to eliminate non-sustainable product.
Next.
Tēnā koutou kei te pai kōrero. My question is, and I'd like you to comment on whether or not you think the title of this panel is actually irrelevant, because what I mean by that is what you're touching on is we have a systemic problem. The system is the problem, and we need to change it. And so if we're looking at that, then is the career that we know as a career that we're talking about, is it actually a thing? And I'm also interested and would like to get your comments. You also said that you'd like the kids to follow their, what they feel is in them to, just follow that. I'd like you to comment on the tension between that idea and for Indigenous peoples who think that it's been the breaking of tradition and tikanga that has brought us to the point and where we're facing an existential threat. Kia ora.
Kia ora, ka pai. That was a wonderful question. And I think you bring up an absolutely fantastic point, right? I think when it comes to the idea of a career, right? So there's a few things to address. When it comes to the idea of a career, right, that can get a bit confusing. And to me, the idea of a career brings up notions of corporate sustainability, where it can feel very much like you're working within the system and you might still be doing a net negative, right? What are you actually trying to do? I think this ties in well with the last question of you can't live perfectly well in today's in 2023. I don't think you can live a perfectly sustainable life, right? That's just not the world we live in, which is unfortunate. I think you can just do your best. I think absolutely in a lot of ways, I would absolutely agree with you that I think one of the biggest causes behind climate change, for instance, is the capitalist economic model that we live in, right? It is absolutely climate change is a symptom of colonization, right? When you move towards that capitalism, that maximizing profits, endless exponential growth without any sort of, just growth for growth's sake, right? That is obviously going to lead to things like climate change. If we actually were able to properly have tikanga incorporated into the system, or honestly, it's probably a better system, concepts like kaitiakitanga meant that we'd actually be able to, this just wouldn't be a problem in the first place, I think there are some other things you noted too around the idea of just going for things, right? And it's there are some really tough questions around, and they're a bit nuanced and they're a bit per person around what it means to try and do good in this nightmare of a system we've created, right? I think for me, for instance, as a trans woman, I fundamentally do not fit into the capitalist system that we have, right? It is not, being trans is not compatible with the world that we live in as it stands. And that kind of sucks, to put it bluntly. But at the same time, right, we've just got to do what we can to try and fix things. We can try and go and change things perfectly, or we can just do what we can. Take it step by step and look at the amount of good we're doing in each action. I think it's about being really conscious of what you're doing and being really honest with yourself if what you're doing is the right thing. To tie it into what I was saying before, I don't think just say if you worked in corporate sustainability, you would necessarily be doing something amazing. If you were yeah, I got my horrible polluting oil company to use LEDs instead of fluorescent lights, guys, that's pretty good. And it's I mean, that's a good thing, but you're also probably perpetuating a terrible system. And I think you just need to be honest with yourself about when you're doing that and when you're actually doing good. It's very tempting to be an anarchist and be this system is terrible, we should just have a new one. I probably do believe that, but I also don't necessarily think that that's easy to do. So I'm just going to try in the meantime to change the one that we've got, even if it doesn't work for me. There are a few sub-questions in there. Was there anything you think I missed or you wanted me to talk more about, or should I pass on? Yeah, all right. Well, I think that's about all the thoughts I had on
You
that.
did a beautiful job, Lauren.
Yeah, have anything you wanted to say?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Who's next?
What main event in your lives shaped your values, and how did you keep those values throughout your lives to today?
Anyone anyone?
Just anyone. I don't. Yeah.
Then we haven't had me in a while. Give it a go.
I think less so one event and more so ripple effect. In terms of, so I mentioned earlier the opportunity to go up to the Refugee Resettlement Centre and do work there. I also mentioned a number that really challenged me, and sitting there and seeing that was kind of heartbreaking at the time. But as well as that, it's just been a ripple effect of really the people around me have been really influential, and it's really the people you grow up with and the people that are around you really make a huge difference. Often, you can look at someone and usually from the four people they're usually closest with, you can kind of see them through them. So it's really important in terms of the people that you're surrounded by and everything. If that kind of answers that. Does anyone want to add to that?
Yeah, I could probably. Just conscious I was also speaking last question. But I think for me, right, I have this question kind of nailed down, because for me, right, it is literally the thing that defines my values, the thing that I think defines my place in this world is my identity as a trans woman. I think even though I really only began transitioning last year, really only like cracked my egg, as the term is, about 2 years ago, it's kind of been like the predominant thing over my whole life, right? That I just didn't feel like things made sense. I didn't feel like I had justice in my own life. So I was always searching for that justice and always trying to make a difference. I started that with climate action, and I still continue my climate action and work in that space. But I think that for sure, right? That sense of not having justice, that sense of just knowing that I fundamentally didn't fit into this world, absolutely defines and drives me to try and change things.
I've just got one really, obviously it's different for everyone, and it's not just one event, but there is one event that I feel was really important in my life. And a couple of years into uni, I ended up spending a summer in the subantarctic islands on Campbell Island. So I had 2 months living with a couple of people on an island 700 kilometers from the nearest civilization. We had zero technology. There was one double burner camp gas stove was the only technology in the whole place. We had to gather water. We had to walk everywhere. There was no machinery. There were no planes flying overhead. There was no radio. There was zero technology. And that was the most amazing couple of months of my life. That I walked everywhere. I ate only the food that we'd brought with us, which was pretty basic, kind of just, lentils and rice and that kind of thing. And it was that realization that all of the other junk in my life didn't make me happy at all, didn't make me anywhere near as happy as those kind of that connection with nature. And as long as I had a warm place, a warm sleeping bag, and that's the really, and friends, people that were around me, connections, that is the really important stuff in life. And, we can quantify it. And when I was your age, the average New Zealand per capita energy use was half what it is today. So we use twice as much energy. I don't think I'm definitely no happier with all that stuff than I was before. It's just such a trap to believe that and we're told it's important. The marketers tell us we couldn't live without it, but it's really such an amazing, and I was so lucky to get that opportunity to find out that stuff matters zilch to me. Yeah.
Amazing. We have literally under a minute left. So Francine, it's on to you for your last point.
I just wanted to share something. I was at your age, just a bit younger. I was lucky to go to a secondary school for 4 years. It was an experimental in Europe where there was no grade. So I studied 4 years and I never had a grade for 4 years. And what it taught me is that we actually don't need to compete. We just need to make people happy. We just need to love each other. It sounds like what utopias, but simple as that. I do believe that capitalism is well over, and that's no way around it, that's for sure. So I'm just hoping that you're going to find a system, because you're the new generation, and I really believe that because I can feel things are happening. It's transitional. So I'm very hopeful something is going to happen because it has to happen. There's no way around it. Capitalism for me is over. Next.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you so much. So that brings us to the end of the panel, and I'd love a huge round of applause for our full panel. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like the key takeaways to me listening to those journeys is that you can kind of really get started doing anything. But as Lauren said, kind of just get started. Think about what that means for you and your context, your family, your life situation. But what are the things you care about? Get started, get working on. It can change at any time. Asking people for, asking businesses to change what they do, asking companies you work for to change what they do. Voice is important. Really powerful stuff. Thank you guys. So just before we head out, we're heading out in a second to Best Family Doctors, which is very exciting. Are you guys wanting some lunch? Yeah, so these guys will be around lunchtime. So again, you can ask them some more of your questions there, and we didn't have a chance to do that. After lunch, you go straight up into your workshops. So don't come back here, go into your workshops. Again, plan out the time right into your workshop. Thank you so much, everyone. I'll see you lunch.